The story begins with a boy named Angus. One sunny day, his mother, Annie, sent him to swim in the sea. But instead of diving into the waves, Angus chose to sit silently by the shoreline, lost in his own thoughts. While gazing at the peaceful ocean, his eyes suddenly caught something unusual, an enormous egg submerged in the water. Curiosity piqued. He waited in just enough to retrieve the strange egg. He was still examining its shiny surface when his mother called out to him, asking him to come back home. Without a moment's hesitation, Angus hid the egg inside his bucket and followed her obediently. Annie was upset with Angus. "You didn't even try to swim," she scolded. "You're as dry as a desert. Why can't you ever do what I say?" But Angus didn't respond. When they reached home, he quickly ran into the workshop at the back of the house, where he often spent his time tinkering. This workshop once belonged to his father, Charlie, who was now serving in the military and fighting in the war. Missing his father, Angus glanced at his photo and checked the calendar to see how many days were left until his return. He then pulled out the mysterious egg, gently washed it, and started peeling off the outer layer. To his surprise, the egg revealed a shimmering blue surface underneath. Just as he was about to inspect it further, Annie's voice echoed again, calling him back. He had no choice but to leave the egg behind and hurry home. That night, a fierce storm hit. Thunder rumbled and rain poured down in torrents. Angus woke up, worried that the egg might not be safe in the workshop. He dashed out into the rain, heart pounding, and found his fears were justified. The egg had cracked open. Frantically searching the workshop, Angus discovered an odd-looking creature, unlike anything he had ever seen. As he approached it, the creature lunged at him. That's when Angus realized it was probably just hungry. He rushed to get it some food. After feeding it, the creature calmed down, and Angus began feeding it with gentle care. But then, Annie's voice rang out again, and he had to leave the creature and head to bed. The next morning brought a new surprise. A squad of soldiers arrived at their home. Annie, Angus, and his sister Christy came out to meet them. They were introduced to Captain Hamilton, who informed them that enemy forces might try to invade via the sea. His team would be stationed at their home to prepare for any attack. The soldiers began unloading equipment and setting up their base. Annie told the children to go back to their rooms. Later, Angus snuck off to the library, hoping to find a book about the creature. Once he found something helpful, he rushed to the workshop. But chaos had unfolded there. The creature was trying to chew on Charlie's old shoes. Realizing it was hungry again, Angus ran to the kitchen, only to be stopped by a stern soldier named Sergeant Strunk. "You're not allowed in here," Strunk growled. "I just need some food," Angus pleaded. Strunk ignored him until Angus cleverly asked, "Can I take out the kitchen trash?" That idea worked, and Strunk gave him permission. Angus dug through the scraps and fed his new friend. Watching it eat, he smiled and decided to name the creature Crusoe. After feeding it, he filled a trash bin with water so Crusoe could swim. Meanwhile, Captain Hamilton trained his men tirelessly for battle. Angus, trying to avoid suspicion, left Crusoe in the workshop and returned to the house. A little while later, a man named Lewis arrived in town and came to the workshop looking for work. Annie offered him a job. He'd have to clean the entire workshop. Lewis got to work immediately. Unfortunately, he took out the trash bin that Crusoe was hiding in. Angus saw it and ran toward Lewis to stop him, but Crusoe had already disappeared. He demanded to know who Lewis was and what he was doing there. "This workshop belongs to my father, and he'll be back from the war soon," Angus insisted. Lewis replied coldly, "Your dad can do whatever he wants once he returns, but until then, I'm in charge here." Disheartened, Angus stormed off and began searching for Crusoe. He found that the creature had wandered into the house, only to be chased by Strunk's dog, Churchill. Luckily, Churchill was chained and couldn't catch him. Crusoe darted into the bathroom and hid. Moments later, Christy entered the bathroom and screamed in terror when she saw Crusoe. Angus rushed to calm her down and explained everything, that Crusoe had come from the mysterious egg he found at the beach. Although terrified, Christy promised to keep it a secret, knowing Crusoe meant no harm. Meanwhile, Annie visited Louis in the workshop with some of Charlie's old clothes. When Louis asked if Charlie was ever coming back, Annie hesitated and said, "No, he's not." She confessed the truth. Charlie had died when his ship sank at sea. Angus didn't know this and still believed his father would return. Later, Annie asked Louis to fix a leak in the bathroom, the same one where Crusoe was hiding. Louis knocked on the door, but Angus and Christie tried to stall him. When they didn't open the door for a long time, Louis threatened to complain to Annie. Left with no choice, Christie opened the door. Inside, Louis was stunned by what he saw. "What is that thing?" he exclaimed. Angus shared the entire story. Louis, although initially frightened, noticed that Crusoe resembled a legendary sea creature, a seahorse, but unlike any known species. "They say only one seahorse exists on Earth at a time," he explained. "When one dies, another hatches from an egg." He spoke of the magical powers such a creature might hold. But before they could discuss more, Annie knocked on the door. Angus pleaded with Louis to help hide Crusoe, as Annie would never allow it in the house. Louis agreed. When Annie came in, she saw nothing, though Crusoe was sneakily peeking from behind a curtain. Louis managed to distract her just in time. Later, Captain Hamilton invited Annie to a dinner being held by the soldiers. That night, Louis tried to convince Angus that Crusoe needed to return to the sea. It was his real home. But Angus refused. "Crusoe belongs with me," he said firmly. As the dinner began, Angus had to leave Crusoe in the bathroom. He accidentally left the door open. Crusoe, curious as ever, escaped. Churchill caught his scent and began chasing him again. The chase led them through the house and onto the dining table, ruining the entire meal. Everyone blamed Churchill for the chaos, and the poor dog got a scolding. Crusoe fled into a garden fountain, where he found small fish to feast on. Meanwhile, Angus searched everywhere. Louis told him to go home and promised he would find Crusoe. True to his word, Louis later found Crusoe near the fountain, but the creature had grown, now much bigger than before. Realizing what had to be done, Louis called Angus. When Angus saw the grown Crusoe, he finally understood. It was time to let him go. They loaded Crusoe into the back of a truck and drove to the beach. With heavy hearts, they released Crusoe into the ocean. Angus was heartbroken, but knew he had no other choice. He stood by the water, watching his friend disappear beneath the waves. The next day, a man named Jimmy and his friend Hugh went out fishing. Suddenly, Hugh felt something massive tug at their line. As they reeled it in, their boat started sinking under the weight. Then, to their astonishment, Crusoe emerged from the water, now fully grown and majestic. Hugh, dreaming of wealth, tried to catch Crusoe, hoping to sell him for a fortune. Jimmy, however, was hesitant. Crusoe began dragging their boat away from shore. In a moment of panic, Jimmy cut the line and saved them. Both men sat in silence, stunned. They had never seen such a creature, nor heard of one existing. Somewhere on the shore, Crusoe swam free. Back at home, Captain Hamilton told Angus that Annie wanted him to start military training. Angus agreed and began helping the soldiers, though he soon found himself tired and bored of the routine. But deep down, Angus knew something magical had happened. He had met a creature from the legends, befriended it, and then let it go, for its own good. And though he missed Crusoe dearly, he would never forget the friend who had come from the sea.